Happy Epiphany, everybody. Brad, could you give me the next slide? Should be up there. No, it's not up there. All right, that's fine. Well, I did wanted to start today by having us think about the Rosca de Reyes, which is this. I wish I could show it to you. I had the New York Times cooking image of it. It's a big ring of pan dulce, and it's got strips of, oh, there it is, yes, right? You got the pecans, you've got acitron, which is like a fruit leather, and it's eaten on Dia de los Reyes, right, on Epiphany in Mexico. And in addition to how elaborate and tasty it is, the very, very special thing about this confection is that it has God in it. Somewhere in the ring, someone has shoved a little plastic figurine or an uncooked bean of the baby Jesus, the reason for the season himself. And so you slice the dough up, and everybody takes a slice, and then you eat very carefully so that you don't chip a tooth. And if you find the baby Jesus, you are the winner. It's a great prize because then you are obligated to cook for everyone at Candelaria on February 2nd. So I think that the rosca is such a great tradition in the way that it forces the hungry Christian to keep an eye out for God, right? Lest we crack a tooth or swallow the guy himself, right? It's a good metaphor for the Christian life in a lot of ways, I think especially for us in the global north. We gobble, gobble, gobble. We enjoy all the sweets we have. And if we're wise, right, we check and we make sure we don't get surprised by God in the wrong place. Epiphany is the season where we have examples of wise and discerning people with a couple of virtues that are really, really important for us today. These characters know how to identify the signs before them, whether it be a star or a dream or some sort of shift in global politics. And in each case, they respond to that sign with a certainty and with a purpose that took them away from their homelands and took them to the place where God called them to be. Today's gospel reading is the story of two sets of faithful migrants. We have the Magi on the one hand and the Holy Family on the other. And each of them possess these skills of discernment that are, kind of mystical, right? But in addition to their ability to recognize signs, they have a sense of purpose in response to those signs that is really deeply canny and courageous. We got to look for God in a circle of bread, and so then when we also look for God in the ink on the page, one of the most striking things for us as Americans this year, I think, is that today we find God taking refuge from genocide, fleeing the slaughter of the innocents that is to come at the hands of a vengeful king, desperate to cling to authority, right? Where we look for God in pastry or in history is really important for how we live as faithful Christians today. And we don't get a lot of dialogue from the guy responsible for all this moving, right, which is Joseph, who, he speaks almost not at all, right? Mary is clearly the family theologian, the family poet, the one with the beautiful words and the great ideas. But Joseph is sure in action, right? The poor guy is just beset by apparitions and dreams, and each time it's about some big life change he has to make and some move. He's early in engagement, early in fatherhood, and unlike his wife, who has some of the world's greatest poetry in response to the visitation of an angel, Joseph just kind of gets up and goes, right? He says almost nothing, at least that we have, and goes straight into the task. Just a little before, right, in Matthew 1, when Joseph awoke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took her as his wife, but had no marital relations with her until she had borne a son, and she named him Jesus, right? Angel arrives, has a dream, gets up, does it. Then he has barely 12 verses to receive a bunch of foreign dignitaries to the birth of his firstborn, figure out his new position as a new father, and then bam, angel's back. time to get going again, right? Get up, pack up your family, go to Egypt until you hear the all clear about the political situation. All right, not a lot of time to worry about the finances, not a lot of time to plan. And once again, we get just like one little verse of Joseph's response. Then Joseph got up, he took the child by night and the mother, and went to Egypt. That's all we get, right? My dad is a firefighter, and one of the things that happens when you have that job is you're like an extremely light sleeper. So when I would try and sneak out in the night to check my phone that I was supposed to be putting up, right, you couldn't get past him. But then they also, when they're on duty, they got to have, it's kind of like a famous thing. You put your boots and then your turnouts around your boots so that the alarm goes off, you hear the dispatcher, and you can just like hop in and then pull the pants right up and go, right? Joseph seems to have something kind of like that ready to go. This like curtness, the rapidity with which he's able to get going at every dream vision he has, makes me think he had some sort of attunement, right? Some kind of preparation. He wasn't listening for like a fire alarm like my dad, but rather just ready for an angel to show up and get him on the move. His response to a sign from God is immediate action at enormous personal cost and kind of incredible risk. It is so hard for me to understand how we can become people like this, who know the signs of God's call and then can go straight into action. There must be some kind of orientation towards contemplation and prayer we can adopt that will make us ready to see the signs and respond to them. There's a Quaker theologian called Douglas Steer who was involved in like the Quaker work camp movements a lot in the mid-20th century. And he wrote that there is a point where, blasphemous as it may sound, the contemplator is always at prayer, and where they are free to carry their action into the contemplation, and the contemplation into the action. It is, in short, an abiding disposition, and out of this the works come. Joseph must have had that kind of abiding disposition towards seeing the signs, recognizing the signs, and then being able to respond to them, one in which he was always ready to act when the signs presented themselves before him. One of the great examples I've been fortunate enough to see in my life was when I was in college on a trip to Veracruz in Mexico. We were observing the work of a group of women called Las Patronas, who I've spoken about before. And for 30 years in this town in rural Veracruz, they live right along the tracks of a train called La Bestia, which carries migrants from the Northern Triangle up through Mexico and then eventually to the United States. Most of these migrants are teenage boys. They are hanging onto the sides of trains or riding on coal carts, and Las Patronas have provided food to them every single day, every time La Bestia passes for 30 years. If you've ever read Enrique's Journey or seen like the Pulitzer Prize winning series of articles about it, it's that train, La Bestia, that runs right past Las Patronas. And they are normal women who live in a rural area and so have lots and lots of chores to do and spend all day. They cook the beans and rice, put them in bags, get bottles of water ready to go, have it all set up, and then are hanging out. They do their chores, they do the dishes, they gossip, and then out of nowhere, and it is remarkable to see, Norma, their leader, can just kind of like stand up, and then without saying a word, everybody marches out to the train tracks, and sure enough, 5-10 minutes later, here comes the train roaring by, and the food is thrown out. It is like this extrasensory perception, because over 30 years, she has honed this ability to notice like a teensy little imperceptible tremor in the earth, and that means the train is coming. It's time to act. She has practiced, and she has routinized in herself the ability to notice when it is time for her to act. These senses have been honed over 30 years of listening for those in need. One of the reasons Norma's example has been so impactful for me is because of the way it has taught me of what that abiding disposition might look like. That noticing signs and noticing God in action in the world is not just about dreams and stars, though I'm sure that works for many, right? But about becoming an expert observer and above all else, staying ready. Joseph was ready. Norma is ready. And this year, I wonder what we at Willow need to stay ready for, and where we should be looking for signs of God's call. In the valley, we do not get a very good view of the stars, so I have a feeling that is maybe not where we should be looking, though every time maybe Michael is up in the high Sierras, you can check the night sky for us. But I suspect that we are going to be beset this year by 1,000 new problems and 1,000 new crises every week. And that kind of paralysis of, well, is everything a sign? Do we have to do everything? Are we called towards everything? Can be very, very daunting when we think about what it is we are supposed to respond to and how we're supposed to respond to them. My instinct is that we must always respond first in prayer at each new headline and push notification and CNN alert or whatever. And as long as we do not become numb or overwhelmed, it is good to respond in prayer and concern and in feeling, and sometimes even in spoken protest or in something at every new evil or problem we hear of. But that does not mean, I think, that CNN will be the medium through which we see the signs of God's call for us. I know we like to plan, and I know we like to be well-considered and reflective in the things we do. But in Epiphany, we see that God's call often comes from without and not from within, from that which comes before us and not from our own discernment or desires. There will be a lot of needs directly before us this year, and we need to stay ready to respond to them, as Joseph did. He, from what we have in the text, did not seem like he took a long time to reflect, to consider his financial situations or his long-term goals for himself and his family before doing what the angel had said. In the night, they got up and they went. And I say this more as a lesson to myself than to anybody else, right? My wife and I recently bought a house. We're settling into our careers. I'm learning all these things I wish I didn't know about Roth IRAs and 401ks. And in reflecting for this, I have genuinely really become aware of the dangers those kinds of preoccupations might pose to my ability to be faithful in the world I find myself in, to give excuses to not follow the signs and answer God's call. If we could only cultivate the kind of abiding disposition Joseph had within ourselves that would let us respond to God's call with speed and faithfulness that the Holy Family showed. 2026 odd years ago, we found God fleeing the place of God's birth and seeking asylum from genocide. This year, maybe we should be looking in some of the similar places for God. We all live in the world's agricultural capital, where some of our hemisphere's deepest wounds of migrant labor exploitation, of environmental destruction, have all happened right here. And does that mean anything for how we should live as God's people at Willow? Who knows? But we should stay ready just in case it does. Amen.